The number one reason we go gray is because there's too much hydrogen peroxide in our cells. And that's weird because we use hydrogen peroxide to bleach our hair or color our hair. But ultimately, hydrogen peroxide is damaging to our body and to our cells. And the way that this works is when your mitochondria are producing energy in your body, in your cells, then one of the side effects or one of the ingredients that's made is hydrogen peroxide. And though your body has interesting antioxidants like glutathione and catalase to try to get rid of this, but still some of this persists because as we get older, the clearance system is not as good. We have less antioxidants than we should in each cell. And so the hydrogen peroxide levels start to build up in your cells, and then they start to damage the mitochondria, which are producing the energy. So it's basically damaging the factory that makes the energy.
Welcome to The Functional Edge. I'm Dr. Julia Ward, and this is where science meets real-world strategies for living healthier, sharper, and stronger. From uncovering hidden environmental toxins to unlocking peak performance and mental clarity, we cover it all. Ready to take control of your health and thrive? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Functional Edge podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Julia Ward, Medical Director and founder of Balanced Body Functional Medicine. Today, we're honored to welcome Faraz Khan to our show. In this episode, Faraz will be sharing insights on hair thinning, hair loss, and a root cause approach to restoring hair health. Faraz is the founder of FullyVital, a hair wellness company focused on natural, science-informed solutions, and host of the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. His journey began through his own experience with early hair loss, which led him to research hair biology, collaborate with clinicians and researchers worldwide, and develop holistic strategies addressing circulation, nutrient support, scalp health, and internal balance. So stay tuned for an engaging conversation that promises to empower and inspire your path to wellness. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Julia.
Yeah, so let's start with some basics. When someone comes to you concerned about hair thinning, what do you see as the most common root causes?
Yeah, totally. So I've been working a lot with women and also with men for the last many years, specifically for hair loss. And there are many reasons for hair loss and root causes for hair loss. They're a little bit different for women versus men. So let me start with the women first. So the number one root cause for women has to do with hormonal changes. And you see this manifest when women get into perimenopause and the menopause age, right around starting at the age of 35 and beyond, when hormones start changing. So estrogen and progesterone start to go down a little bit, and this causes a relative imbalance with testosterone. And that relative imbalance of testosterone typically converts to DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which then goes up to your scalp follicles and starts to shrink them. So over time, what you experience is a progressive thinning of the hair follicle. This is the same method of action in both men and women. But this follicle starts to thin over time, and every time a new follicle grows out, it's thinner and weaker and wispier than the last time. And over time, if this is not addressed, then you can permanently lose that hair. It can just basically shut down and go dormant and not grow again. So that's the number one reason for hair thinning, and it's also the most pernicious, the most dangerous, something you have to address sooner than later because it's a progressive condition. Then there's other use cases. And even before I go into that, I've had women ask me how can I tell what type of hair loss I have? Because there's many. For women, it's multifactorial. And so if you are a woman that's undergoing hair thinning, hair loss, or even if you're a man, you could do this test. Next time you're in the shower and you're, shampooing your hair, washing your hair, then just pull a few hairs that you have in your hands, maybe, just stick them up against the tile in the shower or against your shower curtain, because it's typically light colored, so you can see your hair against it. And if you stick a few hairs on it, then what you might notice is that some hairs are thinner and some hairs are thicker. And so this progressive thinning typically, like I said, happens because of the DHT overload, or DHT is actually thinning it. So that's really one easy way for you to compare your hair follicles and hair strands to see which ones are thinner versus not. So that's usually a good giveaway. So that's one way to know. And that's, again, the number one cause of thinning for women and for men. Now, for men, this happens early on in life because testosterone is very high when they're just after puberty. So the ages of 17 to 25, very dangerous for a male because testosterone is absolutely peaking. For women, this happens later on in life because they're so well protected by estrogen early on that by the time they hit 35, 40, 45, and estrogen levels are falling and there's imbalance with testosterone, that can typically kick off the hair thinning cycle. The root cause is DHT, but the kickoff trigger could be many, many things. It could be high blood pressure. It could be high levels of stress, life changes. Like, it's really interesting how many things can actually trigger it. But the root cause is still the DHT. And then if you want, we can talk about some of the other causes for women specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I see nutritional issues are usually a problem in my practice. What deficiencies are most strongly correlated or connected to hair loss?
Yeah, according to science, there's a few ingredients that are very, very critical nutritionally for hair. So this is vitamin B12, we've got folate, we've got vitamin D, iron, and zinc. These are the big five. You want to be in the middle of the range for all five of these. If you're on the low end of the range, you're probably going to experience some hair thinning. And you don't want to be too high in the range either, but at least in the middle of the range. So these are the big five. Obviously, you want to eat more protein. That's always a given. Hair is made of protein, specifically keratin protein. So you want to have that. Collagen also helps because it helps like smoothen your hair follicles or hair strands, I should say, and help with breakage even. So high protein, collagen, and the big five that I mentioned, those five have to be very, very important. They are very important and they should be considered. If you are losing your hair next time you go to the doctor, at least check for those five in addition to other things we'll talk about in this podcast.
Right. So something I've seen more in my clinic, and I'm curious about your perspective, with the increase of the use of GLP-1 medications, have you noticed any changes in hair thinning or hair loss patterns? And what do you think could be driving that?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime a patient, this has been happening for a long time, anytime a consumer loses a lot of weight in a short span of time, the body goes into a state of shock because the body doesn't know what's happening, right? This has never happened in the past, in the last millennia of human life. And now suddenly when you lose 15 pounds in a month, it just feels like a big change for the body. Yeah. And so this is also what typically happens when you have high levels of stress or a breakup or a surgery or something that induces a physical or physiological stress on the body. It says, hey, I think something is wrong. We may be dying. So I have to conserve all of my resources towards the core organs of the body. Heart, lungs, you name it, like the core organs, brain. But the hair, your hair is quite frankly dispensable and it's not required for you to live. And so in that instance, it pulls a lot of the resources, the vitamins, minerals away from the hair follicles and towards the core organs to help you survive. The problem with that is immediately your hair follicles shift into the resting phase because they've lost the blood supply or the nutrients or the body's kind of abandoned them, quote unquote. And so they shift into this resting phase, after which they have to go into the shedding phase to grow back again. And therein lies the rub because yes, in the shedding, when you go through this phase, a lot of people experience this through COVID or after COVID, is that you would lose 30, 40, 50% of your hair because that's how much hair shifted into that phase because of this stressor, the weight loss or the COVID or anything else that's an acute stressor. You might lose a lot of your hair. It's going to come out in fistfuls and it's very, very scary to a lot of people. But what's interesting is that typically a lot of this hair will grow back unless you have multiple root causes of hair loss going on at the same time, and a lot of people do. And so if you have that multiple root causes going on, then because this should resolve by itself, this huge loss should resolve by itself, it doesn't because a second root cause prevents all of the hair growth back. And so now you don't realize, you think it was the COVID or the weight loss that caused it. It will cause a lot of hair loss. But what's really important is you have to make every attempt in that type of scenario to bring all the hair back, to support your hair in every way possible so that you can get all the hair to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's interesting too that there's a big time delay too between the stressor and the actual hair loss, right? It's not immediate.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about 2 to 3 months later after the stressor, which full knocks a lot of people because they don't expect it.
Right.
But that's how human and hair biology work.
Yeah. Yeah. If someone wants to investigate hair thinning more deeply, what labs or testing do you consider most valuable?
Yeah. So the two biggest tests that I see, obviously they talked about the big 5 ingredients. Those are absolutely important to do. And then in addition to those 5, I typically recommend, or iron's already included, so I typically recommend iron, TIBC, and ferritin levels just to make sure where you are on that scale, because too much iron causes hair thinning and too little iron also causes hair thinning. So which is very interesting. We have to be very careful with iron. And the second one is the thyroid. Thyroid full panel with antibodies, because this will tell us how the thyroid's functioning. And thyroid is critical for hair growth as well, because it's the energy production engine of your body. And so we want to make sure the thyroid's functioning and it's not attacking your own cells with the antibodies. So we want to make sure the thyroid's in a good condition and it's also in the middle of the range. These are the two tests that I recommend and that we see for the most part in consumers and patients that are going through this. What some folks ask, should you get a DHT test? And what's really interesting about this is the DHT tests are inconclusive, because sometimes even normal circulating levels of DHT can cause or trigger an abnormal reaction on the scalp. So even though there's normal levels circulating, your scalp might be more sensitive to DHT. And that's a genetic component, right? So it's tricky to say, let's measure DHT levels, and if it's high, it's bad. If it's low, it's fine. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that.
Oh, that's interesting. What about zinc levels? Do you get like an RBC zinc?
Yeah, I'd highly recommend getting a zinc test as well, because that's part of the big five. And so work with your doctor if you do the iron panel separately and then you do a zinc separately, but both of those are critical for you to know, like B12, zinc, folate, vitamin D3, and iron levels. They have to be carefully managed.
Okay, great. I'm also very interested in genomics and personalized medicine. Do you use genetic insights to determine someone's predisposition for hair loss or guide treatment disorders? For example, tests like the Tricho test that look at gene variants related to follicle biology and nutrient metabolism. Do you find this clinically useful?
Yeah, we haven't been using these tests quite as much, because we end up recommending to a lot of folks is a few blood tests to kind of understand where they are. And we want to also measure their stress levels, because stress is one of the biggest contributors to whole body breakdown as well as hair loss. And so we want to get the stress levels as low as possible in the human body. And so that's one more reason. So I'll just touch on stress real briefly and then I'll come back to your question. So as we mentioned, acute stress can cause a lot of shedding 2 to 3 months after the incident, but chronic stress also is a major factor. It causes chronic hair loss. We call it chronic telogen effluvium. So chronic hair loss is just ongoing and nobody really knows why it's happening. It's because you have just elevated stress levels, and most of us do. And so one of the key goals that we have is to get patients to really tamp down their stress levels, which then we see improves biology and markers across the board, including their sleep, which it also ties back into hair and stress levels and cortisol spikes. So all of that's connected. Now, when it comes to genomics, what we do find is that with hair loss, once you identify the root cause, then it's really a factor of hitting this problem with as many things. We have to throw the kitchen sink at it. And so it requires 4 or 5 sinks at the same time to get the best results. And so because we are seeing that a lot of patients respond quite well to this targeted, multifaceted approach, we're not diving very deeply into the genomics aspect of it as of yet.
Okay. Patients always ask about practical things they can do today. Do shampoos or topical products truly make a difference? And how often should someone be washing their scalp or hair?
Yeah, great question. So shampoos, I think, are pretty worthless. And this is a bold claim, but it should be normalized by now, because a shampoo sits in your scalp for 5 minutes, especially for women, 1 to 2 times a week. They're not washing their hair every day, right? And so there's not enough you can do in 5 minutes, 2 times a week, right? That's that's no time, basically no time on your scalp. With that said, there is one shampoo out there that it contains the ingredient ketoconazole. So you could get that with a prescription. So you want to get the 2% ketoconazole shampoo. That has some data on reducing inflammation levels on the scalp, which can be a good thing. So if you were to use any shampoo, I would recommend using ketoconazole 2% as a frontline treatment, not for too long, maybe for 3 months, and then switching to a caffeine-based shampoo that can support and energize hair follicles for the long term. So we're about to launch a shampoo as well. But anyway, I would recommend using ketoconazole 2.0 or 2%, the frontline therapy for 3 months, and then moving on to a more natural approach. So that's the first part of your question. The second part was around hair serums or topicals that may be effective long term. So obviously the most studied topical on the hair loss space for men and women is minoxidil. And there are a couple of big issues with minoxidil. And they're big because one of them is the delivery mechanism of minoxidil. It uses propylene glycol, which can be quite irritating to the scalp. And therefore, then that leads people to not apply it every single day because you want to have good hair. You want to have good hair days. And you don't want to wash your hair for many days. So if the moment you wash your hair that same evening, you have to apply a sticky solution, then women prefer not to do this. And so that leads to non-compliance, which is a big thing. The second issue with minoxidil is that, and this is the reason a lot of people don't see a lot of long-term benefits from it, is that it requires, minoxidil needs to be converted to its active form for it to work on your scalp. And for that, you require an enzyme on your scalp called minoxidil sulfotransferase. And so a lot of people don't have enough of the enzyme to convert minoxidil into its active form. So that's the other reason why maybe some people don't, do so well in minoxidil. Now, there are some tests that can tell you if you'll be a good candidate for minoxidil, and you may try those. I typically just try to avoid topical minoxidil because it's just too much of a hassle. And so what I prefer instead is to use a well-formulated, well-researched topical solution that's non-oily, non-greasy, that contains clinical ingredients that have good results. And this we found can do as good or better than minoxidil 5% for women.
Okay.
And so
Great.
that's my recommendation typically, because compliance is extremely important when it comes to hair growth. When you're taking, either using topicals on your scalp or you're using supplements, you want to do something for 90 days, because just like the hair falling out takes about 60 to 90 days. Same thing with hair growth. And you'll be surprised at how much you could get if you combined 3 or 4 things, like we talked about, doing a lot of things together at the same time. If you combine that approach and you roughly understood the root causes, because that can go very far as well. Roughly understand, you use your root causes and then use the best approaches available out there that are natural and that allow you to be consistent over time. That is the best way to get your hair back.
Okay. And is it true that if you use minoxidil, you have to keep using it? Or if you stop it, it's going to shed again?
Yes. So 2 things happen. Number 1, there's something called the minoxidil dread shed. So as soon as you start applying minoxidil, within a few weeks, you'll lose a lot of hair. And this freaks a lot of people out, because what minoxidil is trying to do is trying to push the existing hair that are just kind of hanging around out so it can grow new hair. But that's going to take 90 days. And so a lot of people freak out of what's going on? Why is my hair shedding right away? So that's called the dread shed. It's very well known in literature. The second thing with minoxidil, as you rightly pointed out, is that it is a hair growth promoter. It doesn't address any of the root causes behind hair loss, but it helps promote hair growth. And so I categorize them separately, right? Root cause products that help address root causes, and then there's the promoters, of which minoxidil is one of them. And so, yes, minoxidil extends your hair in the anagen or the hair growth phase, so it keeps it on your scalp for longer. But it's extending it, so it's not forever. It's not a given. So the moment you stop minoxidil, the extension of that anagen phase is going to stop, and thereby you're going to lose the hair follicles that it was holding up. And so those hairs are going to fall out. So that's the downside of minoxidil, is you have to use it for a very long time. And that's the other reason I don't love it, because it's if you were to use something for a long time, minoxidil is not it, right? Unless you're in dire straits. And I understand that sometimes you must use minoxidil, and that's totally fine. But given if I have a choice, I will prefer to not use minoxidil topically.
Okay. I'd love for you to share your approach and products that are designed to support people dealing with thinning hair. What makes them different?
Yeah, totally. Thank you for this question. What we did is we spent many, many years trying to understand what are the root causes behind hair thinning. And we found that there's many of them. And so then we said, okay, is one product typically enough? Because we see a lot of people come to us to say, hey, can I just buy the supplement, or can I just buy a serum? Yes, you can, of course, as long as it's formulated well. But the problem is that, as I said, we've seen this in many, many years already, that over many, many years, is that the best results for hair growth happen when you combine 3, 4, 5 things at the same time. So what does that mean? That means using or taking a hair supplement that's well validated every single day, right? So you support internally all the root causes. You give your body all the nutrition, the big 5 that I talked about. You have them readily available in one supplement. And then also other things like circulation enhancers that can help boost blood flow and also delivery of these nutrients to your hair follicles. So The supplement is very key because it helps support your hair growth from within. And we believe we make the best hair supplement in the market. And so you're welcome to try it out because it addresses about 6 root causes of hair loss on the scalp. Like we talk about circulation, we talk about the core nutrients that you need. Also, the nutrients have to be in the right dosage because some nutrients like iron and selenium, if you take too much of those, you can lose hair. So you have to be very careful with selenium and iron as well. And so we've got ours in the right dosages, and we've got all the 6 root causes that we address using the hair supplement with FullyVital. The second product that I'm very proud of is the hair serum, which is called the Enhanced Hair Serum. And this addresses 5 root causes of hair thinning. It addresses inflammation on the scalp, addresses oxidative stress, it addresses DHT hormones and circulation, and also scalp health and rejuvenation. It includes, peptides, exosomes, senolytics, along with a host of hair growth ingredients that also block DHT. So this is by far the most powerful serum on the market because it's also leveraging cutting edge new technologies that are available to us, like senolytics and exosomes. They're all available in a hair. And so I would highly recommend, and also it's non-greasy. So you apply it in the evening. I've applied it to my hair like the last 3 or 4 days and I haven't washed my hair since. And so you can easily style your hair as well after you apply it. It evaporates and dries off. And then the third thing I would recommend is a lot of hair brushing. So we sell a bamboo brush. It's wooden, it's natural, that we recommend you brushing your scalp, not your hair, but your scalp, about 200 to 400 times every single day, because that really promotes circulation, blood flow, gives you, it's like kind of like a massage to your scalp. And again, the goal is to increase circulation so that the nutrients can get into the follicles where they need them. And then the fourth thing that I highly recommend at a minimum is a derma roller. If you're experiencing hair thinning, then a derma roller has been found in scientific studies by itself with nothing else to regrow 15% hair, which is a lot of hair, right? So if you were to use a derma roller once a week, which is what I recommend at a 1 millimeter depth, then, and especially use a serum after that for better penetration, then you can see a rejuvenation of the scalp. You can see, the growth factors come into play and they help heal that area and help you grow more hair. In fact, with derma rolling, even in areas that in your body that you might have scars on, when you start derma rolling, you will see hairs growing back out where you had no hairs for many years. It's quite a magical thing to do. And so those are the 4 minimum things I would recommend. And there's a few more we can talk about as well.
Okay. And with that derma roller, does it have to break the skin or is it just causing a little indentation?
It's just a 1 millimeter needle that we sell that's found to be the best depth. In some studies go very deep, but then you can bleed. We don't want to go there. So 1 millimeter, we believe, is the best according to scientific data. And it doesn't really break. There's no blood. There's no blood rushing down your face. You can't even see it. It's tiny pinpricks into your scalp, but that allow for a lot of rejuvenation to happen. And then what I typically recommend is apply the serum right after so you get even better penetration of the ingredients.
That's great. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on photobiomodulation, which is like the red light therapy for hair thinning and loss.
Yeah.
Is there evidence or clinical experience suggesting that it can support follicle health or regrowth?
Yes, there is clinical evidence. Again, I categorize this as a hair growth promoter, similar to minoxidil, but not as something that addresses root causes. So we want to do both. We want to address all the root causes possible. And then if we can add on some more hair growth promoters, the more the better. I'm totally happy with that. And so this is not a frontline treatment that I recommend to customers or clients, but what I will do is that, so here's how it works. Let me address that first. The red light therapy, especially certain wavelengths of it, have been known to increase cytochrome C oxidase in your mitochondria, which helps promote more energy or make more energy. And if your cells have more energy, then they're going to do the work that they're supposed to do, which is to grow your hair. And your hair in particular requires a lot of energy. There's a lot of growth happening every single day. And it's one of the fastest dividing organs or organelles in the body and cells in the body. And so therefore that needs a lot of energy. And what red light therapy can do is help provide more energy that helps your hair grow more and not fall off as much because now it has more energy. But again, you have to use it every single day. You have to use a cap or helmet. So what I do find is compliance can be a challenge for a lot of customers because they'll use it for 2 or 3 months and then it just sits in a closet the rest of its life, never to
Okay.
be used again. So if you're going to use it, try to find a cheap one. These devices are pretty much the same. There's a lot of marketing around those, but a lot of these devices are the same. So if you can find a cheap one, do that, and then add that on top after you've got all the main products in place.
I got it. Got it. Well, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about gray hair.
Mhm.
What are the primary biological drivers behind the graying process?
Yeah, there's quite a few biological drivers behind graying. The number one reason we go gray is because there's too much hydrogen peroxide in our cells. And that's weird because we use hydrogen peroxide to bleach our hair or color our hair. But ultimately, hydrogen peroxide is damaging to our body and to our cells. And the way that this works is when your mitochondria are producing energy in your body, in your cells, then one of the side effects or one of the ingredients that's made is hydrogen peroxide. And though your body has interesting antioxidants like glutathione and catalase to try to get rid of this, but still some of this persists because as we get older, the clearance system is not as good. We have less antioxidants than we should in each cell. And so the hydrogen peroxide levels start to build up in your cells. And then they start to damage the mitochondria, which are producing the energy. So it's basically damaging the factory that makes the energy. And so this makes cells tired and old. And this causes your hair to go gray because the pigment cells stop working as well. And so what we want to do is to help support the clearance of the hydrogen peroxide in your body as of one of the first line treatments. So how do you do that? You increase antioxidant levels in the body. You help rejuvenate the scalp. You provide a lot of support with anti-inflammatories and other things that are important for rejuvenation. That's one of the ways that we kind of address this. But also, there are other root causes for gray hairs. So stress, prolonged stress can cause gray hairs. If you have a crazy amount of stress, like an insane amount of stress for a short period of time, that can cause you to deplete all of your pigment cells. And that is why you will see some people that go gray overnight. Well, it's not overnight, but it could be over a few months because the gray can't travel up the hair shaft. It's already dead, right? So it has to grow out in the next hair growth cycle. And so stress is another one. We've got high levels of homocysteine can cause more gray. So you want to get those down as well. And for people that go premature gray, there's also more interesting reasons like chronic illnesses, high inflammation, smoking, drinking, environmental pollution, bad diets, no exercise. In fact, even getting a postgraduate degree can cause you to be more at risk for gray hairs earlier than others. And even like your height, if you're taller than average, you're more at risk of having more grays. So there's a host of reasons, but the main one is hydrogen peroxide levels and high stress levels. And then also there's the stem cell depletion in the niche. For some reason, the gray hair stem cells, or the color melanocyte stem cells, seem to deplete faster than other stem cells in the body. And so there's ways to support those stem cells, protect them from radiation, from the sun, etc., and to keep them safe from bad shampoos or bad ingredients or bad beauty products that may be harming you. And so it's also important for you to use really clean beauty products. But there are ways to support the grays as well, from inside and from outside.
Wow, that's great. So, I mean, if people are going to be turning gray, what age does this typically happen?
Yeah, another great question. So Caucasians typically start turning gray in their mid-30s. And for Asian ethnicities, it's starting in your 40s, right around when you turn 40. And then for African nationalities or ethnicities, it starts around 44 to 45. So mid-40s is when they start going gray. And this has been observed from data all around the world. And so if you are going gray earlier than 35, then that's typically premature hair graying. But if you're Caucasian and you're going gray at 35, then that's right on schedule. And now it is helpful for you if you're looking to maybe like slow down the graying process or reverse it naturally without using bleaches or colorants or going to the salon every 3 to 4 weeks to cover up your roots, then our products can certainly help. What I would recommend is that if you're less than 30% gray, you will have a better chance or a better result with reversing existing grays, but also delaying new grays. And so we can certainly delay new grays easier. But if you're more than 50% gray, then it's going to be tough to reverse or return all of them back to the pigmented state.
Okay. It sounds like hair graying and hair loss are similar in that they're both sensitive to a lot of stress.
Yes, your whole body is sensitive to stress.
Yeah.
And it's just the story we've been learning through, I think in Ayurveda, they talk about stress being the thing that messes your body up the most. And so we're learning that as we get more science and more clinical studies and more data, I think we're learning and confirming that stress just destroys the body and your systems and upsets the balance in your body more than anything else. And so in this fast-paced world, we do have to take time to ourselves to slow down and deregulate that stress.
Yeah. So speaking of stress, let's talk about antioxidants. How important are they? And are there particular ones that you find meaningful for slowing the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main antioxidants in the body are catalase and glutathione. And so glutathione seems to be a good pathway to go after. And so what we have added, there's also other very good antioxidants like vitamin C and alpha lipoic acid, very strong, and others. So what we have in our formulas, especially in the anti-gray supplements, is we've got L-serine, which is an amino acid, which is a precursor to glutathione. So this helps generate new glutathione in your body. We want to be careful with, giving you too much glutathione directly because then your body will stop making it. The body kind of adjusts. And so we give the body precursors to help it generate its own glutathione through L-serine. We also include quite a bit of vitamin C for antioxidant support, as well as alpha lipoic acid, which is a very strong antioxidant that can even cross the blood-brain barrier to provide, support in your brain. And so these are the three that we use for antioxidants, and they're essential both for hair growth, but also especially for gray hairs, because then they help clear the hydrogen peroxide from your cells.
Oh, got it. Let's go a bit deeper into the melanocytes and the melanocyte stem cells.
Yeah.
What role do they play in pigment production and loss?
Yeah, so the cycle starts as follows. So melanocyte stem cells are kind of near the hair follicle niche, and they sit there and they're pretty dormant until the hair cycle reboots. And so both the hair follicle stem cells and the melanocyte stem cells kind of reboot at the same time when a new hair is starting to grow. And the melanocyte stem cells do is they differentiate, and then they, create new melanocytes. These melanocytes now travel down to the root of the hair bulb, where they now sit and produce the pigment that's going into every hair strand as it grows out. And so that's the connection between these two. One is creating the other anytime the hair cycle reboots. And so we want to protect both of them, because with aging, what happens is that you can start to lose the melanocyte stem cells because you've been sitting in the sun for way too long and there's radiation damage to your cells, or the melanocytes themselves can not be functioning as well. So either you're not taking care of your body, or you're just getting older, because that's what happens. And so the cells are slowing down and the melanocyte function is slowing down. And so we want to make sure we support both of those, keeping the melanocyte cells as healthy as possible, and then supporting the stem cells against DNA damage, against radiation, to make sure they last as long as possible.
Got it. Some practitioners connect elevated homocysteine and graying. Do you see a meaningful relationship there?
Yeah, there's actually scientific data that corroborates that high homocysteine levels can lead to more grays, and there's very interesting pathways of how that can happen. And so what we recommend typically is B vitamins, B12 especially. Methylated B12 can be very helpful at lowering your cysteine levels, and it's quite an easy fix. That's why we've got healthy amounts of B vitamins in the anti-gray supplement that we make, just to make sure you're covered on the homocysteine front. Again, it's just covering as many bases as you can with one supplement. Is how can you protect the stem cell niche? How can you help promote circulation? How can you have enough antioxidants to kind of, get rid of the hydrogen peroxide levels? How can you balance stress levels with ashwagandha and some other adaptogens? Is to just make sure that the entire supplement is formulated around this anti-aging benefit and also targeting the root causes of grays as possible. In fact, we also added spermidine a little while ago, because spermidine has shown some empirical data in reversing grays, but also it's a very good anti-aging agent generally. And so it's getting a lot of popularity. So we've got spermidine already in the supplement that's helping you, slow down your aging.
Okay. And from a practical standpoint, what strategies may help slow down or support reversal of gray hair?
Yeah, again, this comes back to managing your stress levels, extremely important. if you can find some kind of downtime routine every single day, morning and evening, that'd be highly beneficial in this format. The other thing is to really think about what you can do with your diet. So anything that you're doing, diet and lifestyle. So anything you're doing that increases, if you live in a polluted city, well, you're going to have more oxidative stress in your body, which is going to cause more hydrogen peroxide and more damage. So that's a given. You want to live in a city with less pollution, if possible. You want to not smoke. You want to not drink excessively. You want to eat good foods. All of these, when done wrong, can increase the oxidative levels in your body. So lowering stress, maintaining a very healthy lifestyle, buying good, healthy hair products because they're touching your scalp and damaging it, and not spending too much time in the sun every single day, or at least covering your scalp when you're out in the sun, if you're sunbathing or whatever. Those can really help slow down quite a bit your progression and then even reverse some of that damage that you might have done already. And then you can add on targeted supplements like ours and targeted serums that help take that to the next level.
Okay. And finally, how do you approach helping individuals who want to restore pigment or improve overall hair vitality?
Yeah, so the easiest way would be to kind of listen to what I shared on the podcast. And then if you want to work with a practitioner to get some of those basic lab tests out of the way, what we do is we sell hair products, like a bundle, a 3-month package and a bundle of hair products that really, we believe, covers all the bases, all the root causes. Most, I should say, there's obviously always more, but as many root causes as we can cover with the supplement, the serum, the derma roller, and the hairbrush. And if you get that as a package, then you're really set for the next 90 days to see results, because a lot of people quit before 30 or 60 days. And so that's why we made a 90-day bundle, so you have enough to kind of really see results. And then we also offer a 4-month money-back guarantee, just because we want to make sure that people get results. And no other company does this, really. Yeah. And so we sell a 3-month bundle, and if you're interested in learning more about it, go to FullyVital.com and go try out the 3-month bundle for both hair growth or the anti-gray, if that's something that you're interested in. But like I said, we have a lot of support available. You can email us at any time. And if you just trust us for 90 days and really go for it using all the methods we've developed, you'll be surprised and pleased with a lot of results that you see.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And we will definitely put your web address on our show notes so people can reference that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Julia.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for joining me on The Functional Edge. I hope today's episode gave you fresh insights and practical tools to level up your life. If you found value in what you heard, don't forget to hit the subscribe, share the podcast with someone who needs it, and leave a review. It's the best way to support our mission of bringing powerful health solutions to more people. For more resources, updates, and behind-the-scenes content, visit drjuliaward.com. Until next time, stay strong, stay healthy, and keep living on the functional edge. Thank you for joining me on The Functional Edge. I hope today's episode gave you fresh insights and practical tools to level up your life. If you found value in what you heard, don't forget to hit subscribe, share the podcast with someone who needs it, and leave a review. It's the best way to support our mission of bringing powerful health solutions to more people. For more resources, updates, and behind-the-scenes content, visit drjuliaward.com. Until next time, stay strong, stay healthy, and keep living on the functional edge.